Hello and welcome to GatherVerse News Unscripted. I'm your host, Priya David Clemens. I'm also the executive producer of the show. Today, we're talking about race. And there are some ugly truths out there. And we're going to dive into them and see how they impact us and what we can do about it. So let's start by talking about some of the statistics out there. In our workforce, in America today, 12% of the people who are working are Black. When it comes to technology, 8% of the workforce is Black. When it comes to leadership, when it comes to people in the C-suite, 3% are Black. That not only means that Black people are losing out on generating wealth, it also means that the technology that's being developed is far less inclusive and representative than it should be. And it means that all of us lose out, right? Like you may have heard this example that when you go to wash your hands in one of those automatic faucets, that when you're darker skinned for a long time, they didn't work as well because they were trained on white skin. And so they wouldn't turn on for Black skin or brown skin like they would for white skin. That is apparently a relic of the past. I don't know. I still have trouble with those sometimes. And I always wonder, like, is this because of my skin or is it just like technology not working the way it should? Okay, to discuss the broader issue of Blacks in technology, we have brought on for you today the Executive Director of Blacks in Technology, which is the largest community of Black people in tech. His name is Dennis Schultz. Dennis, thank you for joining the show today. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Priya. Nice to be here.
So tell us a little bit about the problems that you see. I've laid out some of the numbers. Do you see that every day still? Do you feel it viscerally?
Yeah, so it not only is it reflected in the numbers, but anecdotally. So I've been in technology or working for a tech company for the past 25 years, and not much has changed from the people I see in different meetings to the people I have as colleagues. The numbers are slowly changing, but the pace is not keeping up with the intent of what the actual increase in technology membership for Black people should be. So yeah, there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
And I just want to point out that you were so dedicated that you were joining us, even though you're in the middle of transit, you're at an airport somewhere. I don't even know where in the world you are.
Yeah, so I'm in DC right now.
Okay. So tell me about what you're saying there in terms of the promise that was laid out. I think back at least a couple of years ago when we had the really horrendous situation of the George Floyd death, the protests that happened after that, and a lot of promises by people in business across the spectrum, but in technology as well, to increase diversity, increase representation. Is that what you point to as one of the early markers, or does it go back even further than that?
Well, it definitely goes back further, but I'll tell you that in the wake of George Floyd's murder, there were a number of company CEOs specifically who made proclamations to the Black community. They were thinking about ways that they can increase diversity within their organizations, and part of their reflectiveness going into the numbers and internally and seeing that they only had a certain number of people who identified as Black when they actually stripped down their diversity numbers. And they said they were going to make changes, and they're going to be investing in the community and coming up with skilling initiatives, and that's great. But a lot of the things that they promised 2-3 years ago haven't yet materialized. So we are trying to at least keep accountable as best we can the number of CEOs who made those promises. We have a report that we've done in conjunction with the Plug, which is an organization that details reporting for Black tech ecosystems, and they created the state of the plague report. So if you go to stateoftheplagues.com, you'll be able to download this report, and it basically shows and spotlights what companies are doing right by their pledges and other companies that still have work to do. But that's just one example. There are many other examples as well.
Can you put some meat on the bones of that for me and tell me, who are we talking about here? Which CEOs, what did they pledge, and where do we stand right now?
Well, there's a number, and I don't want to pick on anyone in particular because the entire tech
Pick
industry
on
could
them,
be
pick on them. Because
could
here's what
be,
I'll say is that, like, I think it's very helpful for people to really know some of the names and faces that you're talking about here, so that it doesn't seem like it's just, this amorphous problem that is, something you can't overcome, that we see
yeah.
the specifics.
Yeah, so in the report, we do detail out, then we say names, we name names. The reason I don't want to do it here is because I don't want to single out one or two because they're, in different companies move at different paces, and we don't always have visibility to some of the things they're doing behind the scenes as well. So I don't want to make it seem like there's one or two executives and, pick a battle with those folks. But there are companies that, want to do well. They have good intent, but they don't necessarily have the executive follow through in order to see those promises to fruition. So that's what we want to see. We just want to see, the promises that were made, because they made them. We didn't ask for them. They were volunteers, and see if there's anything that we can do to help facilitate the progression of those pledges.
Dennis, as I'm talking to you, you're obviously a very reasonable human being. You're obviously very, well educated, intelligent. I don't sense any sort of like frustration out of you. Do you feel frustrated?
Uh, I'd say there's no animosity, but there's definitely frustration. When I think about the industry and my personal story, so I grew up in a Navy family. We weren't rich by any means, or middle class, but I know that if I had opportunities early on, or had mentors early on, or knew, the different opportunities available through tech, that I would have made earlier and different decisions in my personal career. I know that there are a lot of people who work either with me who have similar stories, families who are either unemployed or underemployed, who could be benefiting from tech resources like free skilling and training to move them out of a level of poverty, or just into a better class state. You can start off making 50, $60,000 in entry level roles in tech without a 4-year degree, and in 2 or 3 years you could be making six figures or better. So there's not a dearth of opportunities. It's really a matter of education, evangelizing, and the frustration lies in, I feel like it's a secret that's been kept from Black folks. It's like, these are tech jobs. You don't need to be a computer scientist. You don't need to be a math whiz. You can do a lot of good things with respect to, upskilling and training, at the corporate level or at the individual level, to get you into a place where you transform your life and transform your neighborhood. So that's what I'm frustrated about.
I think that's so interesting that you just said you feel like it's a secret that's been kept from Black folks. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, when I was going to school, and everybody talked about engineering, and they talk about STEM. So STEM is like a nice buzzword or buzz phrase, but when we dig into it, you ask anybody in high school or middle school, what STEM, they know about the science part. They may talk to robotics because maybe there's a robotics team at the school, but they don't know about the what we call traditional or practical IT jobs. So cloud engineering, data science, cybersecurity. Those things aren't taught at school, and because teachers aren't aware of what those jobs entail, they kind of shy away from any computer science discussions, which is a little bit of the problem that exacerbates itself. So when they get to high school, when they get to college, they don't necessarily see those opportunities because they've never been shown those opportunities. So we want to do a better job of making sure that those opportunities are presented earlier to younger people, so they can have at least the option to say yes, that's something I'm interested in, or no, I'm not. Because if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah. And that's part of the work you do with Blacks in Technology Foundation. Do you feel like you're moving the needle?
We hope so. We do see our growth in numbers. Currently, we have 76 chapters in 20 countries, over 25,000 members. Most of our members are IT practitioners, which means they're hands-on keyboard working with, IT on a daily basis. Though we do have entrepreneurs and educators in there as well. we would like to think that over the course of the next couple of years, we'll be able to influence policy, grow the membership base in the diaspora of Africa, because we're doing a lot of work in multiple African countries as well. We have an annual conference, which we have some pictures here that you're seeing, that we host every year. This year, we're going to be in Nashville. So if you're interested in tech or aspiring to be a technologist, or you are in IT yourself, definitely come to Nashville. It's going to be September 5th through the 7th. And we're going to be hosting approximately 1,500 or so attendees. Last year, we were at Disney World, which was a good time. This year is going to be even better.
So it sounds like those are moments that sort of give you hope that there is momentum and there is growth. If there is one thing that you could get tech companies here in the Bay Area, let's say, because I'm in San Francisco, surrounded by tech companies, if there is one thing you could get tech companies to change, what would it be?
Well, there's a 4-year college degree requirement for a lot of jobs, and that recredentialing is keeping a lot of folks away from tech roles. I think if you can take that away and open it up to people who actually have the practitioner level skills to do the job, certification, self-taught learning, give assessment tests to determine, prowess and see if they're actually able to do the job, versus, having an arbitrary, degree requirement, because I think that keeps a lot of folks away. So that would be the one thing. There are many things that I could offer, but that would be the one thing if I just had to give one.
If you want to tick off a couple more, I'm all ears.
Well, bias in the interview process, removing, the filters for application tracking systems that will arbitrarily filter out candidates, sometimes based on things that seem innocuous but could be filtered down to race, so those things that require a little more effort. Those are some of the things that I'd like to see companies kind of dig into their own practices, their own processes, and seeing why they have this in place, what determines a person's viability within the company, and seeing if they can look past some of the, what I call superficial things, and get into the meat of, what these jobs really need. There's over 1 million jobs in IT available right now, and there are not enough computer science majors in college to fulfill those jobs, even if all of them went into their career choice, which would, be impossible, because most people don't do what they went to school to do. So there's a gap, and we know we can fill it. We know we can skill the people to do it. We just have to have companies that are willing to hire.
I'm surprised to hear that about how many jobs are open, because I feel like all I hear about these days are layoffs, more and
Yeah.
more layoffs at these big tech companies.
There are a lot of layoffs, but even the companies that are laying off are hiring more than they're laying off. I'm looking at the landscape, and even though companies, and some companies make headlines because they're laying off thousands of people, but those big companies are still hiring thousands of people. So I think it's a restructuring of sorts. I think they're using this time. A lot of companies are looking at each other saying, okay, well, if they're laying off, maybe we can correct too. And I don't know if there's I haven't seen any real empirical data around why these companies are laying off, but I have seen the trend, and I think it's a pendulum. It's going to swing back, but as it stands, those jobs still need to be filled, whether they're filled with people who are working with the companies doing double the work, or they're going to hire more people. The work it still needs to be done. People still need to be hired.
What's your story, Dennis? How did you get into this work?
Oh, wow. So my personal story is I started off as a technology education major at Virginia Tech. Thought I was going to teach until I realized how much teachers made, and I realized that I wanted to make a little more money than that of a teacher. And I knew I liked technology. I knew I liked computers. I was interested in kind of marrying my people skills with technology, and ended up going into tech sales. And I've been working for a number of major companies. I worked for Dropbox and Gardner and Samsung and Lenovo and Dell. I'm currently at Microsoft. And, I've made a way by basically doing things that were self-taught. And then I also made sure that I was give myself opportunities to learn every step of the way. So if there was a training that was free that the company had, I was doing it. If there was, any type of class I could take, I was curious and aspirational, I guess is the best two ways to describe me.
And I'm curious about what you're seeing in terms of how tech is changing. Just asking you an overview question about the landscape right now. What are you seeing in the difference these last, maybe 6 months have been? Let me try and ask this a little bit more clearly. In the last 6 months, it seems like there have been some tectonic shifts in tech, particularly because of generative AI. Do you feel like that's also true? And how do you think that impacts opportunities for Black people?
Yeah, absolutely. And generative AI is fascinating. It's this amazing place to be. But we need to be in that space. You mentioned earlier, with the hand waving in the water. I was doing that at the airport just today, just trying to get the water to come out. But the data sets that are used in order to drive these algorithms for AI and machine learning, um, they're biased, not necessarily intentionally, but because people don't have representation in the rooms where these decisions are being made, so they don't think about it. It's kind of a passive bias, if you will. But if we are there, then we can say, you know what? Have you considered, or what if we did it this way to account for this subset of people and that type of thing? So, um, a lot of IT decisions that seem like they're mega decisions are typically made in small teams. So to get into those small teams, you can have a lot of influence if it's a team of 5 to 10, and you're one or two of the people of color on that team. That's 20% is not necessarily a bad representation for that group. So I try to think in terms of the micro and the macro. What can we do to kind of make sure that we're there? But it really comes down to getting folks in the right place, which means that we need to get them skilled up with the right understanding and knowledge, and then get them the jobs that actually put them in place to make those decisions. So we're trying to make sure that we're influential in every step of the way as an organization.
To get people in the room where it happens, right?
Yeah, just like Hamilton.
uh, Before I let you go, last question. What have you seen in the last, few weeks, in the last month, that has made you go, oh my gosh, this is incredible? What piece of tech, what software have you seen that has just blown your mind?
Well, I'm looking at all the companies that are doing things with AI, and since I work at Microsoft, I'm looking at Microsoft's investment in the integrations that Microsoft has in AI tools and generative AI for the websites, and the Bing engine with AI driven technology is amazing. And I was a Bing bigot. I didn't really like Bing, but now, and I'm not saying this because I work at Microsoft. Now, there are some very, very cool things on the horizon, and I know that Microsoft wants to be a major player in that space. So it's going to be kind of an arms race between the big guys on how things actually get generated, how AI is used, and how it's integrated into different everyday technologies. So that to me is exciting. Keeps me going.
So have you switched your search? Are you now going to Bing for your primary search engine?
I am Bing primary as it stands today. Yes.
All right, I'm gonna have to try it out myself. I have not yet made that switch, but I'm gonna give it a try.
All right. All right. Please do. I mean, it's actually pretty cool.
All right, Dennis Schultz, thank you so much, the executive director of the Blacks in Technology Foundation. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. All right, and for all of you joining us, come on back tomorrow. We are going to be talking about the top headlines of the week. Raphael Timmons and I are going to break it all down for you. If you would like to sponsor us, if you would like to share a story idea with us, we are all ears. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to know what you want us to cover so that we can get you the news and information that you need to navigate this rapidly shifting landscape of technology. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Priya. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon for GatherVerse News Unscripted.